Today on Gear and Review, we are going to review a piece of gear that is actually not new. Not only is it not new, it's not even available for sale typically anymore. You can go online on places like reverb.com and you can find these used, but the prices are varying. I got lucky on mine, but for the most part, if you like this review and you like this piece of gear, the ones that I have found in great condition are probably running around the $1,000 to $1,300 mark, and some of the other ones are running around about the around about the $700 mark. Me personally, I got lucky and I was able to get mine as pretty much new old stock. It was a display model at a music store. So that being said, so mine's never had an owner and has never left the smoke-free environment of the music store. So that's good. But anyway, let me explain what it is before my jibber jabber gets too far along. This is the Randall RM100. It's a pretty cool concept. It was designed by what was a collaboration basically between Randall and Bruce Egnater. And what it is each one of these preamps is a removable module. And what actually, when you buy the head, if you were to have bought this brand new, you would have bought this head as the head unit only with no preamp modules, and then you would fill the amplifier with whatever modules you preferred. And they had a pretty wide selection. And not only did they have a wide selection, there were a couple places doing third-party modules, and there were places doing modifications on the modules that could turn them into replications of even more amplifiers. Now, the thing that piqued my interest the most about these was a YouTuber by the name of the Tone King had head-to-headed one of these with the actual amps that he happened to have in his collection. And the thing that I noticed, granted, before I say this, granted, before anyone corrects me, I completely understand the pitfalls of trying to do an audio comparison by way of YouTube with the online, with all the variables involved, i.e. the microphone, the compression put on by that, the compression done to it by going into the recording console, the difference in what monitors you're listening to it through, plus the intense compression that YouTube puts on your audio anyway when you upload the signal. So I knew that, I knew that there were some variables that I wouldn't be able to account for. But that being said, I was blown away by how closely each of the two audio signals sounded. I think he basically did a JCM 800 comparison, and I can't, off the top of my head now, I can't remember which amps he did, but he compared probably, I guess, three or more, he compared three modules. And at that particular point in time, I was sold. Now the problem is by the time I came around to being sold on the whole idea, by the time I came around to being sold on the whole idea, these amps were on their way out. They were in the process of being discontinued. Now, I didn't know that until I started my search to try to purchase one, and then that's when kind of the bottom fell out. So I kind of put that on the back burner as, okay, well, that was the rig I really wanted that I wasn't able to get. So, you move on to the next thing, to the next big thing. They did make Bruce Egnater made a custom American-made version of it, and I say American-made because a lot of the Randall material is designed in the US, but the actual manufacturing occurs in China. The American version of this that Bruce Egnater was putting out, which was a much higher end version, and another big difference between the modules that he designed for Randall and the ones he did for himself. Let me see if I have one of the modules here not installed, is you can see that this is pretty much a single channel module. So each module was one channel. So basically you got a 3-channel amp if you put 3 modules in. His system was a 4-module rack system, but each one of his modules had an A and a B that were switchable. So basically each module had 2 channels. So that gave you basically, out of a 4-module bay, you got 8 channels. But these modules are actually pretty cool. I'll give you a look at them. Now the amp by itself is already going to be running 4 power tubes, and as any normal amplifier that like any normal Marshall or anything of that nature, it's running 3 preamp tubes, basically 2 preamp tubes, and if I'm not mistaken, it's probably 2 preamp tubes and a phase inverter. But the thing is each one of these modules right here, each module has 2 12AX7 preamp tubes built into it. So out of those 3 preamp tubes in here, if this bay is loaded up, that's another 2, 4, 6 12AX7s. These circuits, they sound pretty good. I mean, I don't necessarily understand exactly the ins and outs of it, except for that I know each preamp is basically printed on these boards with the preamp tubes, and then you just unscrew these 2 screws here, pull this module out, and then slide this module right in, and you can change it to whatever you want. It's pretty ingenious, especially if you need a lot of different tones on a budget. Because on a budget, what you could do is you could buy all the different amp sounds that you require, and without having to buy the amp itself, you could switch out how your rig sounds. I mean, meaning like if you come into a situation where like, wow, I really wish I had a Vox AC30 for this one part. So instead of trying to beg, borrow, or steal a Vox AC30, or instead of going in debt and buying an AC30 for just this one thing that you want to do, you could spend $400 on the module and then just add it to your collection, much like you would a high-end boutique pedal or something. I think that's cool. Now, another thing to talk about before we get way into the amplifier is finding, if you do pick one of these up, try to pick one up that already has modules with it. And the reason being is modules, or stock modules, are not something that's easy to come by. I was able to get one extra module, so with my purchase I got 3 modules, which are the 3 modules that are in the amplifier. And then when the techs went over the amplifier before they sent it, they were hearing some noise in the plexi module. So they called me and asked me could they just give me a different module instead. And since my plans were already to have all the modules modded anyway, it was like, sure, it doesn't matter, just send me they gave me a choice between the Vox and the tread plate, and I just send me the tread plate. because the mods that already, or the modules that already do distortion, are easy to mod into other things, whereas in clean mods can typically only be modded for a handful of things, like a dumble or something of that nature. So, but the good part about that is I haven't had any problem out of the Plexi module. So really, it just looks like I really just wound up lucking out and getting an extra module for nothing, because whatever problem it was having, the jostling around in transit must have fixed it. So it is what it is. So okay, that will bring us to, ooh, turn you down. Will bring us to, what else did I need to say about it? Oh, I wanted to also mention that, like I said, with the availability of the modules being limited, or at least the availability of the stock modules being limited, I would, if I got one of these, get one that already came equipped with modules. But that being said, so I think the thing that killed it for them was the price and the fact that it was manufactured in the Middle East. I've always personally thought that, I think that if you manufacture in the Middle East, you should really pass more of the savings on to your customer, because I think they'll be more loyal to you at that point. I think your product will do better. I think that was one of the things that helped Black Star get out of the gate, was they that the Venue series that was being manufactured Far East, excuse me, I've been saying Middle East, I meant Far East. You know, their stuff was manufactured, their 8 Venue series was manufactured in the Far East, but they priced it accordingly. And I think that says a lot. Now, there are some other companies that have tried doing some manufacturing in the Far East, and haven't necessarily passed all the savings on to us. Basically, what they did is they just increased their own profit margin. But like I said, the problem with that is the average consumer, when given the option of paying, I don't remember what this sold for brand new now off the top of my head. I just do not remember what the selling price was. But what I do know is that it could have been, probably around a $1,500, $2,000 marking for that, man. I mean, there were some viable American-made products or British-made products that they could go for. I think that was the problem with Randall's line. I also think that's what wound up being the problem with Egnater's line. That, and I think another thing that hurt Egnater was the first round of products that they put out had a lot of problems. And it wasn't Bruce's fault, but it was his product. So, I mean, unfortunately, you kind of take the hit, whether or not the problem is the problem is with your product, or the problem is with a part in the product. Even though you don't manufacture that part, but if you get a bad lot and they start failing, it comes back on you. There was nothing wrong with the design of the Egnater. Well, there was nothing wrong with the concept of the Egnater amp, but they were, at least the tour masters I know, were plagued with bad transformers. But Bruce didn't make transformers. That's the thing. He designed the amps and he built the amps. Somebody else built those transformers for him. But, that's the nature of the beast, because the average guitar player doesn't know that much about amp design and doesn't research that much about it either. And, they'll take a person can have the bad luck. That could have had, a bad parts shipments have happened to lots of amp manufacturers. The difference is larger amp manufacturers that aren't new and have a loyal fan base, they can usually survive something like a bad batch of parts. but a new amp manufacturer trying to get off their feet, a bad batch of parts can be detrimental to them. That can be that basically can be the closing of the door. And it didn't close the door on Egnater, but it really slowed them down because they had some good products. I mean, I don't care what anybody says about Egnater amps as far as their quality. I mean, we can debate back and forth their quality, and granted, I even did a video on the quality of Egnater amps years ago, and you know, and it was what it was, which meaning that it doesn't matter how well the design was or anything, but if the amp was failing, that did kind of that did wind up being a testament of its quality, whether it was his fault or the parts menu or his parts distributor or whatever. But it's still, I mean, to the person that's buying the amp, you really don't care who's the fingers being pointed at. You're still left with an item that's not working. So yeah, I think that was one of the things that really hurt him. But the amp, as far as the sound quality, they were some good amps. I loved my Tourmaster. I thought it was great. But when everybody else's Tourmaster started dying at gigs, because me and a couple of my friends bought Tourmasters, and when theirs died, I sold mine. I didn't want to be at a gig or be at practice and my amp go down. I couldn't afford to take that kind of risk. So like I said, knowing that there was either a design flaw or there was a part problem, I got out. But I think that's things like that are what put bad taste in people's mouths about amps manufactured in the Far East. And realistically, the fact that it was manufactured in the Far East probably had nothing to do with the problem. I think the problem was a bad batch of parts. And I say that because you take an amp like Vox, when it was being manufactured in Britain, had a high fail rate. Their fail rate has decreased considerably since manufacturing was moved to the Far East. So, you know, the equation is never quite that simple, or never quite as simple as we make it. But like I said, I think that was the problem with this amp. I think it was the Far Eastern manufacturing in conjunction with the price tag, in conjunction with the newer style technology. And I think it just put guitar players off, and I don't think they really, for the most part, gave it a solid chance because, well, it didn't stick around. I think if it had been a big seller, I would have thought that it would have stuck around a little longer. Not that it didn't have a decent run. It was around for a good few years. But anyway, like I said, if you get a chance to pick one of these up at a decent price, I would. Now, what I've been seeing some used ones going for, actually, there are some new ones out there still, brand new, and you can pick those up somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500. I've seen it. Now, I picked mine up because it was a floor model. It wasn't new in the box, but it was new, old stock, never sold. It's never left the showroom, and I picked it up for like $750, and that was with the 4 modules. So that was a steal. I don't know that you're going to find a deal like that, but I do think that you can find one like this used, and by used I mean actually used, like purchased and played. I believe you can probably find one of those loaded for around about the same price, somewhere between $600 and $1,000, I think, if you look hard enough or if you haggle, because these things are not flying off the shelf. That's the beauty about an amp that's not flying off the shelf. There's wiggle room. You know, people aren't going to be standing fast on a price on this amp because, I mean, hell, they've been out of production for years now, and there are still new ones to be purchased. So, I mean, these are people that just have these eating up their inventory. So I guarantee you see one of these being sold for $1,500 brand new, make him an offer. I bet he comes down. If he doesn't, he's an idiot, because there's no telling how long he's been sitting on it already and not been able to sell it. And another thing is, if you get one of these, be sure and check out Salvation Mods or Motor City Mods, which is an American store that sells the Salvation mods here in the States. But you can order the mods directly from Salvation Mods. And another cool thing about Salvation Mods is if you have a mod that you want that they don't make, you can have them make you a custom mod. But now the price is going to depend on how much time it takes to design it and everything. So I can't say what it's going to cost you. Anyway, I think we've covered everything there is to cover on that. Now, the last thing I want to show you is I want to show you how easy it is to switch out a module. Okay, which one are we going to take out? Which one am I now going to use? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in standby. Now, I haven't read that that's what you have to do, but that's what I'm going to do. You unscrew these two thumb screws on each side. And we're taking out the black face just for the record. You just slide it out. As you can see, this is the black face module. Same thing as what I said before. You know, they're your preamp tubes and everything. And your circuit board and your preamp tubes. And little heat sink in the back. This is the part where this is what actually connects it to the circuit. Oops, I'm just holding it the wrong way so you can't see it. This is what plugs in and connects it to the circuit. We don't want to pick it up by that. I'm going to set it on that because that's safe. We're going to take the brand new, and this treadmill, well, like I said, this is new old stock and it's never been sold, but you can see from how clean that board is that this, I took it out of the box after I got it. You can see that this thing has never been, this has been in a box for its entirety, because these things have been out of production now for a few years. Way too many for this to actually been sitting open anywhere and still be that clean and dust free. And you just make sure it's lined up properly. Slide it in and lock it in with the thumb screws. That keeps it from pulling out. And like that, you have now added, or not added, but you've now changed kind of the nature of the beast. So now we have in bay 1, instead of a black face, we have kind of a dual rectifier. Here's the, this is just my 2 cents, and I don't know that I'm right, and I really don't have anything to draw on, but this is what I think. I think the main downfall of these amps was, A, guitar players are not the most tech savvy guys on the planet. You have two distinct school of guitarists. You have the tried and true old school guitar player, and that's the guy that doesn't like his Les Paul to change, and he doesn't like too many technological additives to amplifiers. He likes his signal path pretty basic, pretty clean, and there's nothing wrong with that. There definitely is nothing wrong with that. And then you have the more techie guitar player. And these guitar players will experiment with amps that do things in very different ways because they're very intrigued by how it gets done. They'll also try modeling technology because they don't see a problem with it. They see technological advances as a positive thing, which it is. But like I said, the bad thing is a lot of guitar players get stuck in what I call technological ruts, where it's basically like, oh, I won't even look at this amp over here because I only play single channel amps because that's the only true signal path. or I only play amps that don't have effects loops, or blah 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 blah. And you know, that's great. It is. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what works for you. But the problem is some guitar players, not all, but some of them actually view technology as kind of technological advances as kind of like a bad thing. I mean, I've even heard guitar players that railed when the Plex system came out because it was a machine putting the frets in. But then they quickly learned it. A human can't fret a guitar with the same accuracy over and over again as that Plex system came in. So that was a positive thing. But when it first came out, it was kind of viewed, some guitar players viewed it rather negative. Now, there are technological advances that come out that suck. Robot tuners. A lot of people didn't like the robot tuners. And some of them didn't work so well the first series so well. So I think that's what got this amplifier is the fact that one, no one had seen a modular system before, and the concept of putting a module in that was only this big and making it sound like this complete amp over in the corner, well, that was just crazy talk. And I think it didn't. I think the concept just never really caught on.